I think I must have heard that. I'm probably quiet because I'm over here. Oh, fire escapers, nice, that's great, but we're doing something, nope, anything there. I could come back to like 8, I guess, and chess then like that, mate, that. Great. I've got some video. Do you think I could get copyrighted? We can get copyrighted for music on live streams, is ridiculous. There's not really good songs that I've found which are not copyrightable. Even like for Indian, with enough Indian very, I can't say the words in Indian. Indie, with the indie games, indie music like that. Wonderwall was like one of them. Hopefully really cool. Yeah, but I was wondering if could get copyright game for just like playing like the Hunger Games book. Cause I have to finish that. Like, you know, the book was playing from the chest, why not? And here we are. Oh, many floors we have to go. Chest and flippers, well, things that we watch, but then it's also hoppers. So like, yeah. In a minute, mate. Go unplug this, go like just do some other stuff. So that's actually going live. On channel? No, fuck off. Okay, so it's live. Please edit what's live, please. I did it last time. Who's in dashboard? Okay, found it. Edit. Add the thumbnail. That's not what I'm looking for. Add the thumbnail. It should go on. If they go on, we don't care about that. What's it like a table thumbnail now? Oh. Now waits to download, we shall build on. As that is almost done, we should keep building on. I'm so reacting, so unreacting about this. Imagine like they both have opposite effects. Like it really is. Anyway.
To move. One left, I love, Joanna says, and frees her hand with an impatient shake. When she brings me back a shell of water, I take it with a silent nod of thanks, knowing how much she would despise the pity in my voice. While Joanna collects water and my arrows, Beatty fiddles with his wire, and Finnick takes to the water. I need to clean up too, but I stay in Peter's arms, still too shaken to move. Who did they use against Finnick? He asks. Somebody named Annie, I say. Must be Annie Cresta, he says. Who? I ask. Annie Cresta. She was the girl Mags volunteered for. She won about 5 years ago, says Peter. That would have been the summer after my father died, when I first began feeding my family, when my whole being was occupied with battling starvation. I don't remember those games much, I say. Was that the earthquake year? Yeah, Annie's the one who went mad when her district partner got beheaded. Ran off by herself and hid. But an earthquake broke a dam and most of the arena got flooded. She won because she was the best swimmer, says Peter. Did she get better after? I ask. I mean, her mind? I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing her at the games again. But she didn't look too stable during the reaping this year, says Peter. So that's who Finnick loves, I think. Not his string of fancy lovers in the capital, but a poor, mad girl back home. A cannon blast brings us all together on the beach. A hovercraft appears in what we estimate to be the 6 to 7 o'clock zone. We watch as the claw dips down 5 different times to retrieve the pieces of one body torn apart. It's impossible to tell who it was. Whatever happens at 6 o'clock, I never want to know. Peter draws a new map on a leaf, adding a JJ for Jabberjays in the 4 to 5 o'clock section, and simply writing Beast in the one where we saw the tribute collected in pieces. We now have a good idea of what 7 of the hours will bring. And if there's any positive to the Jabberjay attack, it's that it let us know where we are on the clock face again. Finnick weaves yet another water basket and a net for fishing. I take a quick swim and put more ointment on my skin. Then I sit at the edge of the water, cleaning the fish Finnick catches and watching the sun drop below the horizon. The bright moon is already on the rise, filling the arena with that strange twilight. We're about to settle down to our meal of raw fish when the anthem begins, and then the faces. Kashmir, Gloss, Wirus, Mags, the woman from District 5, the morphling who gave her life for Peter, Blight, the man from 10. 8 dead, plus 8 from the first night. 2/3 of us gone in a day and a half. That must be some kind of record. They're really burning through us, says Joanna. Who's left, besides us 5 in District 2? Asks Finnick. Chaff, says Peter, without needing to think about it. Perhaps he's been keeping an eye out for him because of Hamish. A parachute comes down with a pile of bite-sized, square-shaped rolls. These are from your district, right, Beatty? Peter asks. Yes, from District 3, he says. How many are there? Finnick counts them, turning each one over in his hands before he sets it in a neat configuration. I don't know what it is with Finnick and bread, but he seems obsessed with handling it. 24, he says. And even 2 dozen then, says Beatty. 24 on the nose, says Finnick. How should we divide them? Let's each have 3, and whoever is still alive at breakfast can take a vote on the rest, says Joanna. I don't know why, this makes me laugh a little. I guess because it's true. When I do, Joanna gives me a look that's almost approving. No, not approving, but maybe slightly pleased. We wait until the giant wave has flooded out of the 10 to 11 o'clock section, wait for the water to recede, and then go to that beach to make camp. Theoretically, we should have a full 12 hours of safety from the jungle.
What? Okay. What's
There's an unpleasant chorus of clicking, probably from some evil type of insect, coming from the 11 to 12 o'clock wedge. But whatever is making the sound stays within the confines of the jungle, and we keep off that part of the beach in case they're just waiting for a carelessly placed footfall to swarm out. I don't know how Joanna's still on her feet. She's only had about an hour of sleep since the game started. Peter and I volunteer for the first watch because we're better rested, and because we want some time alone. The others go out immediately, although Finnick's sleep is restless. Every now and then I hear him murmuring Annie's name. Peter and I sit on the damp sand, facing away from each other, my right shoulder and hip pressed against.
I'm gonna go quickly and do the dishes. I'll be right back. Okay, love you, so goodbye. Yo, what's up, peeps? Damn, mate. Again, see if I see any more because it's 99 time. Trying to read that. Anyway, back to this.
Tis. I watch the water as he watches the jungle, which is better for me. I'm still haunted by the voices of the jabberjays, which unfortunately the insects can't drown out. After a while, I rest my head against his shoulder, feel his hand caress my hair. Katniss, he says softly, it's no use pretending we don't know what the other one is trying to do. No, I guess there isn't, but it's no fun discussing it either. Well, not for us anyway. The Capitol viewers will be glued to their sets, so they don't miss one wretched word. I don't know what kind of deal you think you've made with Haymitch, but you should know he made me promises as well. Of course, I know this, too. He told Peeta they could keep me alive so that he wouldn't be suspicious. So, I think we can assume he was lying to one of us. This gets my attention. A double deal. A double promise. With only Haymitch knowing which one is real. I raise my head, meet Peeta's eyes. Why are you saying this now? Because I don't want you forgetting how different our circumstances are. If you die, and I live, there's no life for me at all back in District 12. You're my whole life, he says. I would never be happy again. I start to object, but he puts a finger to my lips. It's different for you. I'm not saying it wouldn't be hard, but there are other people who'd make your life worth living. Peeta pulls the chain with the gold disc from around his neck. He holds it in the moonlight so I can clearly see the mockingjay. Then his thumb slides along a catch I didn't notice before, and the disc pops open. It's not solid, as I had thought, but a locket. And within the locket are photos. On the right side, my mother and Prim laugh. Can't you see he's the man like me?
Hello?
This call is from the Investigation Division of the National Crime Agency.
No, it's a scam.
Weapon. Your family needs you, Katniss, and my pretend cousin Gale. But Peeta's intention is clear, Peeta says. My family, my mother, my sister, that Gale really is my family, or will be one day if I live, that I'll marry him. So Peeta's giving me his life and Gale at the same time, to let me know I shouldn't ever have doubts about it. Everything. That's what Peeta wants me to take from him. I wait for him to mention the baby, to play to the cameras, but he doesn't. And that's how I know that none of this is part of the games, that he is telling me the truth about what he feels. No one really needs me, he says, and there's no self-pity in his voice. It's true his family doesn't need him. They will mourn him, as will a handful of friends, but they will get on. Even Haymitch, with the help of a lot of white liquor, will get on. I realize only one person will be damaged beyond repair if Peeta dies. Me. I do, I say. I need you. He looks upset, takes a deep breath, as if to begin a long argument, and that's no good. No good at all, because he'll start going on about Prim and my mother and everything, and I'll just get confused. So before he can talk, I stop his lips with a kiss. I feel that thing again, the thing I only felt once before, in the cave last year, when I was trying to get Haymitch to send us food. I kissed Peeta about 1,000 times during those games and after, but there was only one kiss that made me feel something stir deep inside. Only one that made me want more. But my head wound started bleeding, and he made me lie down. This time there is nothing but us to interrupt us, and after a few attempts, Peeta gives up on talking, The sensation inside me grows warmer and spreads out from my chest, down through my body, out along my arms and legs, to the tips of my being. Instead of satisfying me, the kisses have the opposite effect of making my need greater. I thought I was something of an expert on hunger, but this is an entirely new kind. It's the first crack of the lightning storm, the bolt hitting the tree at midnight, that brings us to our senses. It rouses Finnick as well. He sits up with a sharp cry. I see his fingers digging into the sand as he reassures himself that whatever nightmare he inhabited wasn't real. "I can't sleep any more," he says. "One of you should rest." Only then does he seem to notice our expressions, the way we're wrapped around each other. "Or both of you. I can watch alone." Peter won't let him, though. "It's too dangerous," he says. "I'm not tired. You lie down, Katniss." I don't object, because I do need to sleep if I'm to be of any use keeping him alive. I let him lead me over to where the others are. He puts the chain with the locket around my neck, then rests his hand over the spot where our baby would be. "You're going to make a great mother, you know," he says. He kisses me one last time and goes back to Finnick. His reference to the baby signals that our time out from the games is over, that he knows the audience will be wondering why he hasn't used the most persuasive argument in his arsenal, that sponsors must be manipulated. But as I stretch out on the sand, I wonder, could it be more? Like a reminder to me that I could still one day have kids with Gale. Well, if that was it, it was a mistake. Because for one thing, that's never been part of my plan. And for another, if only one of us can be a parent, anyone can see it should be Peeta. As I drift off, I try to imagine that world, somewhere in the future, with no games, no capital. A place like the meadow in the song I sang to Rue as she died, where Peeta's child could be safe. Chapter 25. When I wake, I have a brief, delicious feeling of happiness that is somehow connected with Peeta. Happiness, of course, is a complete absurdity at this point, since at the rate things are going, I'll be dead in a day. And that's the best-case scenario, if I'm able to eliminate the rest of the field, including myself, and get Peeta crowned as the winner of the Quarter Quell. Still, the sensation's so unexpected and sweet, I cling to it, if only for a few moments. Before the gritty sand, the hot sun, and my itching skin demand a return to reality. Everyone's already up and watching the descent of a parachute to the beach. I join them for another delivery of bread. It's identical to the one we received the night before. 24 rolls from District 3. That gives us 33 in all. We each take 5, leaving 8 in reserve. No one says it, but 8 will divide up perfectly after the next death. Somehow, in the light of day, joking about who will be around to eat the rolls has lost its humor. How long can we keep this alliance? I don't think anyone expected the number of tributes to drop so quickly. What if I am wrong about the others protecting Peeta? If things were simply coincidental, or it's all been a strategy to win our trust, to make us easy prey, or I don't understand what's actually going on. Wait, there's no ifs about that. I don't understand what's going on. And if I don't, it's time for Peeta and me to clear out of here. I sit next to Peeta on the sand to eat my rolls. For some reason, it's difficult to look at him. Maybe it was all that kissing last night. Although the two of us kissing isn't anything new. It might not even have felt any different for him. Maybe it's knowing the brief amount of time we have left, and how we're working at such cross purposes when it comes to who should survive these games. After we eat, I take his hand and tug him toward the water. Come on, I'll teach you how to swim. I need to get him away from the others where we can discuss breaking away. It will be tricky, because once they realize we're severing the alliance, we'll be instant targets. If I was really teaching him to swim, I'd make him take off the belt, since it keeps him afloat. But what does it matter now? So I just show him the basic stroke, and let him practice going back and forth in waist-high water. At first, I notice Joanna keeping a careful eye on us, but eventually she loses interest and goes to take a nap. Finnick's weaving a new net out of vines, and Beatty plays with his wire. I know the time has come. While Peter has been swimming, I've discovered something. My remaining scabs are starting to peel off. By gently rubbing a handful of sand up and down my arm, I clean off the rest of the scales, revealing fresh new skin underneath. I stop Peter's practice, on the pretext of showing him how to rid himself of the itchy scabs, and as we scrub ourselves, I bring up our escape. Look, the pool is down to 8. I think it's time we took off, I say under my breath, although I doubt any of the tributes can hear me. Peter nods, and I can see him considering my proposition, weighing if the odds will be in our favor. Tell you what, he says, let's stick around until Brutus and Enobaria are dead. I think Beatty's trying to put together some kind of trap for them now. Then, I promise, we'll go. I'm not entirely convinced, but if we leave now, we'll have 2 sets of adversaries after us. Maybe 3, because who knows what Chaff's up to. Plus, the clock to contend with. And then there's Beatty to think of. Joanna only brought him for me, and if we leave, she'll surely kill him. Then I remember, I can't protect Beatty too. There can only be one victor, and it has to be Peter. I must accept this. I must make decisions based on his survival only. All right, I say. We'll stay until the careers are dead, but that's the end of it. I turn and wave to Finnick. Hey, Finnick, come on in. We figured out how to make you pretty again. The 3 of us scour all the scabs from our bodies, helping with the others' backs, and come out the same pink as the sky. We apply another round of medicine because the skin seems too delicate for the sunlight, but it doesn't look half as bad on smooth skin, and will be good camouflage in the jungle. Beatty calls us over. It turns out that during all those hours of fiddling with wire, he has indeed come up with a plan. I think we'll all agree our next job is to kill Brutus and Enobaria, he says mildly. I doubt they'll attack us openly again, now that they're so outnumbered. We could track them down, I suppose, but it's dangerous, exhausting work. Do you think they've figured out about the clock? I ask. If they haven't, they'll figure it out soon enough. Perhaps not as specifically as we have, but they must know that at least some of the zones are wired for attacks and that they're reoccurring in a circular fashion. Also, the fact that our last fight was cut off by Game Maker intervention will not have gone unnoticed by them. We know it was an attempt to disorient us, but they must be asking themselves why it was done. And this, too, may lead them to the realization that the arena's a clock, says Beatty. So I think our best bet will be setting our own trap. Wait, let me get Joanna up, says Finnick. She'll be rabid if she thinks she missed something this important. Or not, I mutter, since she's always pretty much rabid. But I don't stop him because I'd be angry myself if I was excluded from a plan at this point. When she's joined us, Beatty shoos us all back a bit so he can have room to work in the sand. He swiftly draws a circle and divides it into 12 wedges. It's the arena, not rendered in Peter's precise strokes, but in the rough lines of a man whose mind is occupied by other, far more complex things. If you were Brutus and Enobaria, knowing what you do now about the jungle, where would you feel safest? Beatty asks. There's nothing patronizing in his voice, and yet I can't help thinking he reminds me of a school teacher about to ease children into a lesson. Perhaps it's the age difference, or simply that Beatty is probably about 1,000,000 times smarter than the rest of us. Where we are now, on the beach, says Peter. "It's the safest place." "So why aren't they on the beach?" says Beatty. "Because we're here," says Joanna impatiently. "Exactly. We're here claiming the beach. Now where would you go?" says Beatty. "I think about the deadly jungle, the occupied beach. I'd hide just at the edge of the jungle, so I could escape if an attack came, and so I could spy on us." "Also to eat," Finnick says. "The jungle's full of strange creatures and plants, but by watching us, I'd know the seafood's safe." Beatty smiles at us as if we've exceeded his expectations. "Yes, good. You do see. Now here's what I propose. A 12 o'clock strike. What happens exactly at noon and at midnight?" "The lightning bolt hits the tree," I say. "Yes. So what I'm suggesting is that after the bolt hits at noon, but before it hits at midnight, we run my wire from that tree all the way down into the salt water, which is, of course, highly conductive. When the bolt strikes, the electricity will travel down the wire and into not only the water, but also the surrounding beach, which will still be damp from the 10 o'clock wave. Anyone in contact with those surfaces at that moment will be electrocuted," says Beatty. There's a long pause while we all digest Beatty's plan. Seems a bit fantastical to me, impossible even, but why? I've set thousands of snares. Isn't this just a larger snare with a more scientific component? Could it work? How can we even question it? We tributes trained to gather fish and lumber and coal. What do we know about harnessing power from the sky? Peter takes a stab at it. "Will that wire really be able to conduct that much power, Petey? It looks so fragile, like it would just burn up." "Oh, it will, but not until the current has passed through it. It will act something like a fuse, in fact, except the electricity will travel along it," says Beatty. "How do you know?" asks Joanna, clearly not convinced. "Because I invented it," says Beatty, as if slightly surprised. "It's not actually wire in the usual sense, nor is the lightning natural lightning, nor the tree a real tree. You know trees better than any of us, Joanna. It would be destroyed by now, wouldn't it?" "Yes," she says glumly. "Don't worry about the wire. It'll do just what I say," Beatty assures us. "And where will we be when this happens?" asks Finnick. "Far enough up in the jungle to be safe," Beatty replies. "The careers will be safe too then, unless they're in the vicinity of the water," I point out. "That's right," says Beatty. "But all the seafood will be cooked," says Peter. "Probably more than cooked," says Beatty. "We will most likely be eliminating that as a food source for good. But you found other edible things in the jungle, right, Katniss?" "Yes, nuts and rats," I say. "And we have sponsors." "Well then, I don't see that as a problem," says Beatty. "But as we are allies, and this will require all our efforts, the decision of whether or not to attempt it is up to you four." We are like school children, completely unable to dispute his theory with anything but the most elementary concerns, most of which don't even have anything to do with his actual plan. I look at the others' disconcerted faces. "Why not?" I say. "If it fails, there's no harm done. If it works, there's a decent chance we'll kill them. And even if we don't, and just kill the seafood, Brutus and Enobaria lose it as a food source too." "I say we try it," says Peter. "Katniss is right." Finnick looks at Joanna and raises his eyebrows. He will not go forward without her. "All right," she says finally. "It's better than hunting them down in the jungle anyway. And I doubt they'll figure out our plan, since we can barely understand it ourselves." Beatty wants to inspect the lightning tree before he has to rig it. Judging by the sun, it's about 9 in the morning. We have to leave our beach soon anyway, so we break camp, walk over to the beach that borders the lightning section, and head into the jungle. Beatty's still too weak to hike up the slope on his own, so Finnick and Peeta take turns carrying him. I let Joanna lead because it's a pretty straight shot up to the tree, and I figure she can't get us too lost. Besides, I can do a lot more damage with a sheath of arrows than she can with 2 axes, so I'm the best one to bring up the rear. The dense, muggy air weighs on me. There's been no break from it since the games began. I wish Hamish would stop sending us that District 3 bread and get us some more of that District 4 stuff, because I've sweated out buckets in the last 2 days, and even though I've had the fish, I'm craving salt. A piece of ice would be another good idea, or a cold drink of water. I'm grateful for the fluid from the trees, but it's the same temperature as the seawater and the air and the other tributes and me. We're all just one big warm stew. As we near the tree, Finnick suggests I take the lead. Katniss can hear the force field, he explains to Beetee and Joanna. Hear it? Asks Beetee. Only with the ear the capital reconstructed, I say. Guess who I'm not fooling with that story? Beetee, because surely he remembers that he showed me how to spot a force field, and probably it's impossible to hear force fields anyway, but for whatever reason, he doesn't question my claim. Then by all means, let Katniss go first, he says, pausing a moment to wipe the steam off his glasses. Force fields are nothing to play around with. The lightning tree's unmistakable as it towers so high above the others. I find a bunch of nuts and make everybody wait while I move slowly up the slope, tossing the nuts ahead of me. But I see the force field almost immediately, even before a nut hits it, because it's only about 15 yards away. My eyes, which are sweeping the greenery before me, catch sight of the rippled square high up and to my right. I throw a nut directly in front of me and hear it sizzle in confirmation. Just stay below the lightning tree, I tell the others. We divide up duties. Finnick guards Beetee while he examines the tree. Joanna taps for water, Peeta gathers nuts, and I hunt nearby. The tree rats don't seem to have any fear of humans, so I take down 3 easily. The sound of the 10 o'clock wave reminds me I should get back, and I return to the others and clean my kill. Then I draw a line in the dirt a few feet from the force field as a reminder to keep back, and Peeta and I settle down to roast nuts and sear cubes of rat. Beetee is still messing around the tree, doing I don't know what, taking measurements and such. At one point, he snaps off a sliver of bark, joins us, and throws it against the force field. It bounces back and lands on the ground, glowing. In a few moments, it returns to its original color. Well, that explains a lot, says Beetee. I look at Peeta and can't help biting my lip to keep from laughing, since it explains absolutely nothing to anyone but Beetee. About this time we hear the sound of clicks rising from the sector adjacent to us. That means it's 11 o'clock. It's far louder in the jungle than it was on the beach last night. We all listen intently. It's not mechanical, Beetee says decidedly. I'd guess insects, I say. Maybe beetles. Something with pincers, adds Finnick. The sound swells, as if alerted by our quiet words to the proximity of live flesh. Whatever is making that clicking, I bet it could strip us to the bone in seconds. We should get out of here anyway, says Joanna. There's less than an hour before the lightning starts. We don't go that far, though, only to the identical tree in the Blood Rain section. We have a picnic of sorts, squatting on the ground, eating our jungle food, waiting for the bolt that signals noon. At Beetee's request, I climb up into the canopy as the clicking begins to fade out. When the lightning strikes, it's dazzling, even from here, even in this bright sunlight. It completely encompasses the distant tree,
Sorry, he's away.
making it glow a hot blue-white and causing the surrounding air to crackle with electricity. I swing down and report my findings to Beatty, who seems satisfied, even if I'm not terribly scientific. We take a circuitous route back to the 10 o'clock beach. The sand is smooth and damp, swept clean by the recent wave. Beatty essentially gives us the afternoon off while he works with the wire. Since it's his weapon and the rest of us have to defer to his knowledge so entirely, there's the odd feeling of being let out of school early. At first we take turns having naps in the shadowy edge of the jungle, but by late afternoon, everyone is awake and restless. We decide, since this might be our last chance at seafood, to make a sort of feast of it. Under Finnick's guidance, we spear fish and gather shellfish, even dive for oysters. I like this last part best. Not because I have any great appetite for oysters. I only ever tasted them once in the capital, and I couldn't get around the sliminess. But it's lovely deep down under the water, like being in a different world. The water is very clear, and schools of bright-hued fish and strange sea flowers decorate the sand floor. Joanna keeps watch while Finnick, Peeta, and I clean and lay out the seafood. Peeta's just pried open an oyster when I hear him give a laugh. "Hey, look at this!" He holds up a glistening, perfect pearl, about the size of a pea. "You know, if you put enough pressure on coal, it turns to pearls," he says earnestly to Finnick. "No, it doesn't," says Finnick dismissively. But I crack up, remembering that's how a clueless Effie Trinket presented us to the people of the capital last year, before anyone knew us, as coal pressured into pearls by our weighty existence, beauty that arose out of pain. Peeta rinses the pearl off in the water and hands it to me. "For you." I hold it out on my palm and examine its iridescent surface in the sunlight. Yes, I will keep it. For the few remaining hours of my life, I will keep it close. This last gift from Peeta, the only one I can really accept. Perhaps it will give me strength in the final moments. "Thanks," I say, closing my fist around it. I look coolly into the blue eyes of the person who is now my greatest opponent, the person who would keep me alive at his own expense, and I promise myself I will defeat his plan. The laughter drains from those eyes, and they are staring so intensely into mine, it's like they can read my thoughts. "The locket didn't work, did it?" Peeta says, even though Finnick is right there, even though everyone can hear him. "Katniss?" "It worked," I say. "But not the way I wanted it to," he says, averting his glance. After that, he will look at nothing but oysters. Just as we're about to eat, a parachute appears, bearing 2 supplements to our meal. A small pot of spicy red sauce, and yet another round of rolls from District 3. Finnick, of course, immediately counts them. 24 again, he says. 32 rolls, then. So we each take 5, leaving 7, which will never divide equally. It's bread for only 1. The salty fish flesh, the succulent shellfish, even the oysters seem tasty, vastly improved by the sauce. We gorge ourselves until no one can hold another bite, and even then there are leftovers. They won't keep, though, so we toss all the remaining food back into the water so the careers won't get it when we leave. No one bothers about the shells. The waves should clear those away. There's nothing to do now but wait. Pete and I sit at the edge of the water, hand in hand, wordless. He gave his speech last night, but it didn't change my mind, and nothing I can say will change his. The time for persuasive gifts is over. I have the pearl, though, secured in a parachute with the spile and the medicine at my waist. I hope it makes it back to District 12. Surely my mother and Prim, will know to return it to Peter before they bury my body. Chapter 26. The anthem begins, but there are no faces in the sky tonight. The audience will be restless, thirsting for blood. Beatty's trap holds enough promise, though, that the game makers haven't sent in other attacks. Perhaps they are simply curious to see if it will work. At what Finnick and I judge to be about 9, we leave our shell-strewn camp, cross to the 12 o'clock beach, and begin to quietly hike up to the lightning tree in the light of the moon. Our full stomachs make us more uncomfortable and breathless than we were on the morning's climb. I begin to regret those last dozen oysters. Beatty asks Finnick to assist him, and the rest of us stand guard. Before he even attaches any wire to the tree, Beatty unrolls yards and yards of the stuff. He has Finnick secure it tightly around a broken branch and lay it on the ground. Then they stand on either side of the tree, passing the spool back and forth as they wrap the wire around and around the trunk. At first it seems arbitrary. Then I see a pattern, like an intricate maze, appearing in the moonlight on Beatty's side. I wonder if it makes any difference how the wire's placed, or if this is merely to add to the speculation of the audience. I bet most of them know as much about electricity as I do. The work on the trunk's completed just as we hear the wave begin. I've never really worked out at what point in the 10 o'clock hour it erupts. There must be some build-up, then the wave itself, then the aftermath of the flooding, but the sky tells me 10:30. This is when Beatty reveals the rest of the plan. Since we move most swiftly through the trees, he wants Joanna and me to take the coil down through the jungle, unwinding the wire as we go. We are to lay it across the 12 o'clock beach and drop the metal spool with whatever is left deep into the water, making sure it sinks. Then run for the jungle. If we go now, right now, we should make it to safety. I want to go with them as a guard, Peter says immediately. After the moment with the pearl, I know he's less willing than ever to let me out of his sight. You're too slow. Besides, I'll need you on this end. Katniss will guard, says Beatty. There's no time to debate this. I'm sorry. If the girls are to get out of there alive, they need to move now. He hands the coil to Joanna. I don't like the plan any more than Peter does. How can I protect him at a distance? But Beatty's right. With his leg, Peter is too slow to make it down the slope in time. Joanna and I are the fastest and most sure-footed on the jungle floor. I can't think of any alternative, and if I trust anyone here besides Peter, it's Beatty. It's okay, I tell Peter. We'll just drop the coil and come straight back up. Not into the lightning zone, Beatty reminds me. Head for the tree in the 1 to 2 o'clock sector. If you find you're running out of time, move over one more. Don't even think about going back on the beach, though, until I can assess the damage. I take Peter's face in my hands. Don't worry, I'll see you at midnight.
Can't you see he's the man? Let me hear you.
Hello?
This call is from the Investigation Division of the National Crime Agency. We've got an order to suspend your national insurance number on immediate basis because your number was found suspicious for several illegal activities. It's very time sensitive and urgent that we hear back from you before we proceed further with suspension of your national insurance number, your assets, and arrest you. Please press 1 to speak to an officer. I repeat, press 1.
He's clearly...
Again, I'm 15, mate. No one's home. Why don't know my insurance number. I don't think I have that message. Insurance number, my bank number, my phone number, but I don't have a insurance number. Or if I do, I don't know where it is.
No happy happier about being teamed up than I am. But we're all caught up in Beatty's trap. You guard, I'll unwind. We can trade off later. Without further discussion, we head down the slope. In fact, there's very little discussion between us at all. We move at a pretty good clip, one manning the coil, the other keeping watch. About halfway down, we hear the clicking beginning to rise, indicating it's after 11. Better hurry, Joanna says. I want to put a lot of distance between me and that water before the lightning hits, just in case Volt's miscalculated something. I'll take the coil for a while, I say. It's harder work laying out the wire than guarding, and she's had a long turn. Here, Joanna says, passing me the coil. Both of our hands are still on the metal cylinder when there's a slight vibration. Suddenly, the thin golden wire from above springs down at us, bunching in tangled loops and curls around our wrists. Then the severed end snakes up to our feet. It only takes a second to register this rapid turn of events. Joanna and I look at each other, but neither of us has to say it. Someone not far above us has cut the wire, and they will be on us at any moment. My hand frees itself from the wire and has just closed on the feathers of an arrow when the metal cylinder smashes into the side of my head. The next thing I know, I'm lying on my back in the vines, a terrible pain in my left temple. Something's wrong with my eyes. My vision blurs in and out of focus as I strain to make the two moons floating up in the sky into one. It's hard to breathe, and I realize Joanna's sitting on my chest, pinning me at the shoulders with her knees. There's a stab in my left forearm. I try to jerk away, but I'm still too incapacitated. Joanna's digging something, I guess the point of her knife, into my flesh, twisting it around. There's an excruciating ripping sensation, and warmth runs down my wrist, filling my palm. She swipes down my arm and coats half my face with my blood. "Stay down," she hisses. Her weight leaves my body, and I'm alone. Stay down, I think. What is happening? My eyes shut, blocking out the inconsistent world as I try to make sense of my situation. All I can think of is Joanna shoving Wirus to the beach. "Just stay down, will you?" But she didn't attack Wirus, not like this. I'm not Wirus anyway. I'm not nuts. "Just stay down, will you?" Echoes around inside my brain. Footsteps coming. 2 pairs. Heavy, not trying to conceal their whereabouts. Brutus's voice. "She's good as dead. Come on, Enobaria." Feet moving into the night. Am I? I drift in and out of consciousness looking for an answer. Am I as good as dead? I'm in no position to make an argument to the contrary. In fact, rational thinking is a struggle. This much I know. Joanna attacked me, smashed that cylinder into my head, cut my arm, probably doing irreparable damage to veins and arteries, and then Brutus and Enobaria showed up before she had time to finish me off. The alliance is over. Finnick and Joanna must have had an agreement to turn on us tonight. I knew we should have left this morning. I don't know where Beatty stands, but I'm fair game, and so is Peter. Peter! My eyes fly open in panic. Peter is waiting up by the tree, unsuspecting and off guard. Maybe Finnick has killed him already. No, I whisper. That wire was cut from a short distance away by the careers. Finnick and Beatty and Peter, they can't know what's going on down here. They can only be wondering what has happened, why the wire has gone slack, or maybe even sprung back to the tree. This in itself can't be a signal to kill, can it? Surely this was just Joanna deciding the time had come to break with us, kill me, escape from the careers, then bring Finnick into the fight as soon as possible. I don't know. I only know that I must get back to Peter and keep him alive. It takes every ounce of will I have to push up into a sitting position and drag myself up the side of a tree to my feet. It's lucky I have something to hold on to because the jungle's tilting back and forth. Without any warning, I lean forward and vomit up the seafood feast, heaving until there can't possibly be an oyster left in my body. Trembling and slick with sweat, I assess my physical condition. As I lift up my damaged arm, blood sprays me in the face, and the world makes another alarming shift. I squeeze my eyes shut and cling to the tree until things steady a little. Then I take a few careful steps to a neighboring tree, pull off some moss, and without examining the wound further, tightly bandage my arm. Better, definitely better not to see it. Then I allow my hand to tentatively touch my head wound. There's a huge lump, but not too much blood. Obviously, I've got some internal damage, but I don't seem in danger of bleeding to death, at least not through my head. I dry my hands on moss and get a shaky grip on my bow with my damaged left arm, secure the notch of an arrow to the string, make my feet move up the slope. Peter, my dying wish, my promise, to keep him alive. My heart lifts a bit when I realize he must be alive because no cannon has fired. Maybe Joanna was acting alone, knowing Finnick would side with her once her intentions were clear. Although it's hard to guess what goes on between those two. I think of how he looked to her for confirmation before he'd agree to help set Beatty's trap. There's a much deeper alliance based on years of friendship, and who knows what else. Therefore, if Joanna has turned on me, I should no longer trust Finnick. I reach this conclusion only seconds before I hear someone running down the slope toward me. Neither Peter nor Beatty could move at this pace. I duck behind a curtain of vines, concealing myself just in time. Finnick flies by me, his skin shadowy with medicine, leaping through the undergrowth like a deer. He soon reaches the site of my attack, must see the blood. "Joanna! Katniss!" he calls. I stay put until he goes in the direction Joanna and the careers took. I move as quickly as I can without sending the world into a whirl. My head throbs with the rapid beat of my heart. The insects, possibly excited by the smell of blood, have increased their clicking until it's a continuous roar in my ears. No, wait. Maybe my ears are actually ringing from the hit. Until the insects shut up, it will be impossible to tell. But when the insects go silent, the lightning will start. I have to move faster. I have to get to Peter. The boom of a cannon pulls me up short. Someone has died. I know that with everyone running around, armed and scared right now, it could be anyone. But whoever it is, I believe the death will trigger a kind of free-for-all out here in the night. People will kill first and wonder about their motives later. I force my legs into a run. Something snags my feet, and I sprawl out on the ground. I feel it wrapping around me, entwining me in sharp fibers. A net. This must be one of Finnick's fancy nets, positioned to trap me, and he must be nearby, trident in hand. I flail around for a moment, only working the web more tightly around me, and then I catch a glimpse of it in the moonlight. Confused, I lift my arm and see it's entangled in shimmering golden threads. It's not one of Finnick's nets at all, but Beatty's wire. I carefully rise to my feet and find I'm in a patch of the stuff that caught on a trunk on its way back to the lightning tree. Slowly I disengage myself from the wire, step out of its reach, and continue uphill. On the good side, I'm on the right path, and have not been so disoriented by the head injury as to lose my sense of direction. On the bad side, the wire has reminded me of the oncoming lightning storm. I can still hear the insects, but are they starting to fade? I keep the loops of wire a few feet to my left as a guide as I run, but take great care not to touch them. If those insects are fading, and the first bolt is about to strike the tree, then all its power will come surging down that wire, and anyone in contact with it will die. The tree swims into view, its trunk festooned with gold. I slow down, try to move with some stealth, but I'm really just lucky to be upright. I look for a sign of the others. No one is there. "Peter," I call softly. "Peter." A soft moan answers me, and I whip around to find a figure lying higher up on the ground. "Beatty!" I exclaim. I hurry and kneel beside him. The moan must have been involuntary. He's not conscious, although I can see no wound except a gash below the crook of his elbow. I grab a nearby handful of moss and clumsily wrap it while I try to rouse him. "Beatty! Beatty, what's going on? Who cut you? Beatty!" I shake him in the way you should never shake an injured person, but I don't know what else to do. He moans again and briefly raises a hand to ward me off. This is when I notice he's holding a knife, one Peter was carrying earlier, I think, which is wrapped loosely in wire. Perplexed, I stand and lift the wire, confirming it's attached back at the tree. It takes me a moment to remember the second, much shorter strand that Beatty wound around a branch and left on the ground before he even began his design on the tree. I thought it had some electrical significance, had been set aside to be used later, but it never was, because there's probably a good 25 yards here. I squint hard up the hill and realize we're only a few paces from the force field. There's the telltale square, high up and to my right, just as it was this morning. What did Beatty do? Did he actually try to drive the knife into the force field the way Peter did by accident? And what's the deal with the wire? Was this his backup plan? If electrifying the water failed, did he mean to send the lightning bolt's energy into the force field? What would that do anyway? Nothing? A great deal? Fry us all? The force field must mostly be energy too, I guess. The one in the training center was invisible. This one seems to somehow mirror the jungle. But I've seen it falter when Peter's knife struck it and when my arrows hit. The real world lies right behind it. My ears are not ringing. It was the insects after all. I know that now, because they are dying out quickly, and I hear nothing but the jungle sounds. Beatty is useless. I can't rouse him. I can't save him. I don't know what he was trying to do with the knife and the wire, and he's incapable of explaining. The moss bandage on my arm is soaked, and there's no use fooling myself. I'm so lightheaded, I'll black out in a matter of minutes. I've got to get away from this tree and... Katniss! I hear his voice, though he's a far distance away. But what is he doing? Peter must have figured out that everyone is hunting us by now. Katniss! I can't protect him. I can't move fast or far, and my shooting abilities are questionable at best. I do the one thing I can to draw the attackers away from him and over to me. Peter! I scream out. Peter! I'm here! Peter! Yes, I will draw them in. Any in my vicinity, away from Peter and over to me, and the lightning tree that will soon be a weapon in and of itself. I'm here! I'm here! He won't make it. Not with that leg in the night. He will never make it in time. Peter! It's working. I can hear them coming. 2 of them, crashing through the jungle. My knees start to give out, and I sink down next to Beatty, resting my weight on my heels. My bow and arrow lift into position. If I can take them out, will Peter survive the rest? Enobaria and Finnick reach the lightning tree. They can't see me, sitting above them on the slope, my skin camouflaged in ointment. I home in on Enobaria's neck. With any luck, when I kill her, Finnick will duck behind the tree for cover just as the lightning bolt strikes. and it will be any second. There's only a faint insect click here and there. I can kill them now. I can kill them both. Another cannon. Katniss! Peeta's voice howls for me, but this time I don't answer. Beetee still breathes faintly beside me. He and I will soon die. Finnick and Enobaria will die. Peeta is alive. 2 cannons are sounded. Brutus, Joanna, Chaff. 2 of them are already dead. That will leave Peeta with only 1 tribute to kill, and that is the very best I can do. 1 enemy. Enemy. The word is tugging at a recent memory, pulling it into the present, the look on Haymitch's face. Katniss, when you're in the arena, the scowl, the misgiving. What? I hear my own voice tighten as I bristle at some unspoken accusation. You just remember who the enemy is, Haymitch says. That's all. Haymitch's last words of advice to me. Why would I need reminding? I have always known who the enemy is, who starves and tortures and kills us in the arena, who will soon kill everyone I love. My bow drops as his meaning registers. Yes, I know who the enemy is, and it's not Enobaria. I finally see Beetee's knife with clear eyes. My shaking hands slide the wire from its hilt, wind it around the arrow just above the feathers, and secure it with a knot picked up in training. I rise, turning to the force field, fully revealing myself, but no longer caring, only caring about where I should direct my tip, where Beetee would have driven the knife if he had been able to choose. My bow tilts up at the wavering square, the flaw, what did he call it that day? The chink in the armor. I let the arrow fly, see it hit its mark and vanish, pulling the thread of gold behind it. My hair stands on end, and the lightning strikes the tree. A flash of white runs up the wire, and for just a moment, the dome bursts into a dazzling blue light. I'm thrown backward to the ground, body useless, paralyzed, eyes frozen wide, as feathery bits of matter rain down on me. I can't reach Peeta. I can't even reach my pearl. My eyes strain to capture one last image of beauty to take with me. Right before the explosions begin, I find a star. Chapter 27. Everything seems to erupt at once. The earth explodes into showers of dirt and plant matter. Trees burst into flames. Even the sky fills with brightly colored blossoms of light. I can't think why the sky's being bombed until I realize the game makers are shooting off fireworks up there, while the real destruction occurs on the ground. Just in case it's not enough fun watching the obliteration of the arena and the remaining tributes, or perhaps to illuminate our gory ends. Will they let anyone survive? Will there be a victor of the 75th Hunger Games? Maybe not. After all, what is this quarter quell but, what was it President Snow read from the card? A reminder to the rebels that even the strongest among them cannot overcome the power of the Capitol. Not even the strongest of the strong will triumph. Perhaps they never intended to have a victor in these games at all. Or perhaps my final act of rebellion forced their hand. I'm sorry, Peeta, I think. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Save him? More likely, I stole his last chance at life, condemned him by destroying the force field. Maybe, if we had all played by the rules, they might have let him live. The hovercraft materializes above me without warning. If it was quiet and the mockingjay perched close at hand, I would have heard the jungle go silent, and then the bird's call that precedes the appearance of the capital's aircraft. But my ears could never make out anything so delicate in this bombardment. The claw drops from the underside until it's directly overhead. The metal talons slide under me. I want to scream, run, smash my way out of it, but I'm frozen, helpless to do anything but fervently hope I'll die before I reach the shadowy figures awaiting me above. They have not spared my life to crown me victor, but to make my death as slow and public as possible. My worst fears are confirmed when the face that greets me inside the hovercraft belongs to Plutarch Heavensby, head game maker. What a mess I have made of his beautiful games, with the clever ticking clock and the field of victors. He will suffer for his failure, probably lose his life, but not before he sees me punished. His hand reaches for me, I think to strike me, but it does something worse. With his thumb and his forefinger, he slides my eyelids shut, sentencing me to the vulnerability of darkness. They can do anything to me now, and I will not even see it coming. My heart pounds so hard, the blood begins to stream from beneath my soaked moss bandage. My thoughts grow foggy. Possibly I can bleed to death before they can revive me after all. In my mind, I whisper a thank you to Joanna Mason for the excellent wound she inflicted as I black out. When I swim back into semi-consciousness, I can feel I'm lying on a padded table. There's the pinching sensation of tubes in my left arm. They are trying to keep me alive because if I slide quietly, privately into death, it will be a victory. I'm still largely unable to move, open my eyelids, raise my head, but my right arm has regained a little motion. It flops across my body, feeling like a flipper. No, something less animated, like a club. I have no real motor coordination, no proof that I even still have fingers, yet I manage to swing my arm around until I rip the tubes out. A beeping goes off, but I can't stay awake to find out who it will summon. The next time I surface, my hands are tied down to the table, the tubes back in my arm. I can open my eyes and lift my head slightly, though. I'm in a large room with low ceilings and a silvery light. There are 2 rows of beds facing each other. I can hear the breathing of what I assume are my fellow victors. Directly across from me, I see Beatty with about 10 different machines hooked up to him. Just let us die, I scream in my mind. I slam my head back hard on the table and go out again. When I finally, truly wake up, the restraints are gone. I raise my hand and find I have fingers that can move at my command again. I push myself to a sitting position and hold on to the padded table until the room settles into focus. My left arm is bandaged, but the tubes dangle off stands by the bed. I'm alone except for Beatty, who still lies in front of me, being sustained by his army of machines. Where are the others then? Peta, Finnick, Enobaria, and one more, right? Either Joanna or Chaff or Brutus was still alive when the bombs began. I'm sure they'll want to make an example of us all. But where have they taken them? Moved them from hospital to prison? Peta, I whisper. I so wanted to protect him. I'm still resolved to. Since I have failed to keep him safe in life, I must find him, kill him now before the capital gets to choose the agonizing means of his death. I slide my legs off the table and look around for a weapon. There are a few syringes sealed in sterile plastic on a table near Beatty's bed. Perfect. All I need is air and a clear shot at one of his veins. I pause for a moment, consider killing Beatty, but if I do, the monitors will start beeping and I'll be caught before I get to PETA. I make a silent promise to return and finish him off if I can. I'm naked except for a thin nightgown, so I slip the syringe under the bandage that covers the wound on my arm. There are no guards at the door. No doubt I'm miles beneath the training center or in some capital stronghold, and the possibility of my escape is non-existent. It doesn't matter. I'm not escaping, just finishing a job. I creep down a narrow hallway to a metal door that stands slightly ajar. Someone is behind it. I take out the syringe and grip it in my hand. Flattening myself against the wall, I listen to the voices inside. Communications are down in 7, 10, and 12, but 11 has control of transportation now, so there's at least a hope of them getting some food out. Plutarch Heavensby, I think, although I've only really spoken with him once. A hoarse voice asks a question. No, I'm sorry, there's no way I can get you to 4, but I've given special orders for her retrieval if possible. It's the best I can do, Finnick. Finnick? My mind struggles to make sense of the conversation, of the fact that it's taking place between Plutarch Heavensby and Finnick. Is he so near and dear to the capital that he'll be excused his crimes? Or did he really have no idea what Beatty intended? He croaks out something else, something heavy with despair. Don't be stupid. That's the worst thing you could do. Get her killed for sure. As long as you're alive, they'll keep her alive for bait, says Hamish. Says Hamish? I bang through the door and stumble into the room. Hamish, Plutarch, and a very beaten-up Finnick sit around a table, laid with a meal no one is eating. Daylight streams in the curved windows, and in the distance I see the top of a forest of trees. We are flying. Done knocking yourself out, sweetheart? Says Hamish, the annoyance clear in his voice. But as I careen forward, he steps up and catches my wrists, steadying me. He looks at my hand. So, it's you and a syringe against the capital? See, this is why no one lets you make the plans. I stare at him uncomprehendingly. Drop it. I feel the pressure increase on my right wrist until my hand is forced to open and I release the syringe. He settles me in a chair next to Finnick. Plutarch puts a bowl of broth in front of me, a roll, slips a spoon into my hand. Eat, he says in a much kinder voice than Hamish used. Hamish sits directly in front of me. Katniss, I'm going to explain what happened. I don't want you to ask any questions until I'm through. Do you understand? I nod numbly, and this is what he tells me. There was a plan to break us out of the arena from the moment the quell was announced. The victor tributes from 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 11 had varying degrees of knowledge about it. Plutarch Heavensby has been, for several years, part of an undercover group aiming to overthrow the capital. He made sure the wire was among the weapons. Beatty was in charge of blowing a hole in the force field. The bread we received in the arena was code for the time of the rescue. The district where the bread originated indicated the day, 3. The number of rolls, the hour, 24. The hovercraft belongs to District 13. Bonnie and Twill, the women I met in the woods from 8, were right about its existence and its defense capabilities. We are currently on a very roundabout journey to District 13. Meanwhile, most of the districts in Panem are in full-scale rebellion. Hamish stops to see if I am following, or maybe he is done for the moment. It's an awful lot to take in, this elaborate plan in which I was a piece, just as I was meant to be a piece in the Hunger Games, used without consent, without knowledge. At least in the Hunger Games, I knew I was being played with. My supposed friends have been a lot more secretive. You didn't tell me. My voice is as ragged as Finnick's. Neither you nor Peter were told. We couldn't risk it, says Plutarch. I was even worried you might mention my indiscretion with the watch during the games. He pulls out his pocket watch and runs his thumb across the crystal, lighting up the Mockingjay. Of course, when I showed you this, I was merely tipping you off about the arena. As a mentor, I thought it might be a first step toward gaining your trust. I never dreamed you'd be a tribute again. I still don't understand why Peter and I weren't let in on the plan, I say. Because once the force field blew, you'd be the first ones they'd try to capture, and the less you knew, the better, says Hamish. The first ones? Why? I say, trying to hang on to the train of thought. For the same reason the rest of us agreed to die to keep you alive, says Finnick. No, Joanna tried to kill me, I say. Joanna knocked you out to cut the tracker from your arm and led Brutus and Enobaria away from you, says Hamish. What? My head aches so, and I want them to stop talking in circles. I don't know what you're... We had to save you because you're the Mockingjay, Katniss, says Plutarch. While you live, the revolution lives. The bird, the pin, the song, the berries, the watch, the cracker, the dress that burst into flames. I am the Mockingjay, the one that survived despite the Capitol's plans, the symbol of the rebellion. It's what I suspected in the woods when I found Bonnie and Twill escaping, though I never really understood the magnitude. But then I wasn't meant to understand. I think of Hamish sneering at my plans to flee District 12, start my own uprising, even the very notion that District 13 could exist. Subterfuges and deceptions, and if he could do that, behind his mask of sarcasm and drunkenness, so convincingly and for so long, what else has he lied about? I know what else. Peter? I whisper, my heart sinking. The others kept Peter alive because if he died, we knew there'd be no keeping you in an alliance, says Hamish, and we couldn't risk leaving you unprotected. His words are matter-of-fact, his expression unchanged, but he can't hide the tinge of gray that colors his face. Where is Peter? I hiss at him. He was picked up by the Capitol along with Joanna and Enobaria, says Hamish, and finally he has the decency to drop his gaze. Technically, I am unarmed, but no one should ever underestimate the harm that fingernails can do, especially if the target is unprepared. I lunge across the table and rake mine down Hamish's face, causing blood to flow and damage to one eye. Then we are both screaming terrible, terrible things at each other, and Finnick is trying to drag me out, and I know it's all Hamish can do not to rip me apart, but I'm the Mockingjay. I'm the Mockingjay, and it's too hard keeping me alive as it is. Other hands help Finnick, and I'm back on my table, my body restrained, my wrists tied down, so I slam my head in fury again and again against the table. A needle pokes my arm, and my head hurts so badly I stop fighting, and simply wail in a horrible, dying animal way until my voice gives out. The drug causes sedation, not sleep, so I am trapped in fuzzy, dully aching misery for what seems like always. They reinsert their tubes and talk to me in soothing voices that never reach me. All I can think of is Peter, lying on a similar table somewhere, while they try to break him for information he doesn't even have. Katniss, Katniss, I'm sorry. Finnick's voice comes from the bed next to me and slips into my consciousness, perhaps because we're in the same kind of pain. I wanted to go back for him and Joanna, but I couldn't move. I don't answer, Finnick O'Dare's good intentions mean less than nothing. It's better for him than Joanna. They'll figure out he doesn't know anything pretty fast. And they won't kill him if they think they can use him against you, says Finnick. Like bait? I say to the ceiling. Like how they'll use Annie for bait?
Can't you see he's the man? Let me hear you applaud.
Years ago in her games. There's a good chance I'm headed in the same direction. Maybe I'm already going crazy, and no one has the heart to tell me. I feel crazy enough. I wish she was dead, he says. I wish they were all dead, and we were too. It would be best. Well, there's no good response to that. I can hardly dispute it, since I was walking around with a syringe to kill Peter when I found him. Do I really want him dead? What I want is to have him back. But I'll never get him back now. Even if the rebel forces could somehow overthrow the capital, you can be sure President Snow's last act would be to cut Peter's throat. No, I will never get him back. So then dead is best. But will Peter know that, or will he keep fighting? He's so strong and such a good liar. Does he think he has a chance of surviving? Does he even care if he does? He wasn't planning on it anyway. He had already signed off on life. Maybe if he knows I was rescued, he's even happy. Feels he fulfilled his mission to keep me alive. I think I hate him even more than I do Haymitch. I give up, stop speaking, responding, refuse food and water. They can pump whatever they want into my arm, but it takes more than that to keep a person going once she's lost the will to live. I even have a funny notion that if I do die, maybe Peter will be allowed to live. Not as a free person, but as an AVOX or something, waiting on the future tributes of District 12. Then maybe he could find some way to escape. My death could, in fact, still save him. If it can't, no matter. It's enough to die of spite. To punish Haymitch, who, of all the people in this rotting world, has turned Peter and me into pieces in his games. I trusted him. I put what was precious in Haymitch's hands, and he has betrayed me. See, this is why no one lets you make the plans, he said. That's true. No one in their right mind would let me make the plans, because I obviously can't tell a friend from an enemy. A lot of people come by to talk to me, but I make all their words sound like the clicking of the insects in the jungle, meaningless and distant, dangerous, but only if approached. Whenever the words start to become distinct, I moan until they give me more painkiller, and that fixes things right up. Until one time, I open my eyes and find someone I cannot block out looking down at me. Someone who will not plead or explain or think he can alter my design with entreaties, because he alone really knows how I operate. Gale, I whisper. Hey, Catnip. He reaches down and pushes a strand of hair out of my eyes. One side of his face has been burned fairly recently. His arm is in a sling, and I can see bandages under his miner's shirt. What has happened to him? How is he even here? Something very bad has happened back home. It is not so much a question of forgetting Peter as remembering the others. All it takes is one look at Gale, and they come surging into the present, demanding to be acknowledged. Prim? I gasp. She's alive. So is your mother. I got them out in time, he says. They're not in District 12? I ask. After the games, they sent in planes, dropped firebombs. He hesitates. Well, you know what happened to the Hob. I do know. I saw it go up. That old warehouse embedded with coal dust. The whole district's covered with the stuff. A new kind of horror begins to rise up inside me as I imagine fire bombs hitting the seam. They're not in District 12, I repeat, as if saying it will somehow fend off the truth. Katniss, Gale says softly. I recognize that voice. It's the same one he uses to approach wounded animals before he delivers a death blow. I instinctively raise my hand to block his words, but he catches it and holds on tightly. Don't, I whisper. But Gale is not one to keep secrets from me. Katniss, there is no District 12. This is Carolyn McCormick. We hope that you have enjoyed this production of Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. This program was produced and directed by Robert Kessler, executive producer Cheryl Smith. Music by Robert Kessler. Text copyright 2009 by Suzanne Collins. Production copyright 2009, Scholastic Inc. All rights reserved.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
It was quite good. Hope to be the third one as well. I hate pausing that. No trouble with the hoppers or after the chest, after the hoppers. What's the first we get bad, Frank? Got so many hoppers would be needed. So many blocks would be needed. It is painful. It's really painful about. Goodbye, bye. Thanks for watching. Alright. Goodbye.